Okay, so let's go ahead and finish up with this little section. We've made all this work, we've gotten everything to go through on here, so let's go ahead and go up to our render setup and see what we can do. Well, we're in art, and that's what we want to do. But if we go ahead and render, we can see that this is, what I called before the little fireflies is the common term for, these little pixely, speckly things. Well, over here, we can go ahead and just leave the output size and all of this stuff alone, because what we want to take a look at is this, the art renderer itself. Well, here's where things get tricky for this. First off, we have the render quality. Right now it's at draft. If we increase this to something like medium, and we hit render, we can see that it's going to be going and takes a little bit longer. Good. And I can take this kind of as far as I want. If I take it all the way to max though, it's going to essentially just keep going and going and going. Right now, as you can see up here on the preview, it's currently, well, it just left the view, but it was about at a 40, and this is going all the way up to 100. But you'll note that it very quickly jumps up on how long it thinks it's going to take. So far, it's going, and every little bit it's going to slow down. But we can already kind of see that this is much, much better. So for this one box, we can see it wants to hit pretty high on its quality. But about 46, all those little speckles are gone, so I'm going to pull this back, and I'm going to put it at roughly a 40 for extra high. Now, as we do, essentially, it's going to work very long, but we have a simple object, so there's not really that much we have to worry about. As we do more scenes with bigger setups and a more high quality texture, start using lights, shadows, things like that, this is going to start taking a large amount of time. So instead, I'm going to pull it back to a medium, and instead I'm going to come down just a little bit. Which, side note, we do have two other options where we can choose for it to render a certain length of time, and regardless of how it's doing, it will stop. We don't want to do that one, and iterations, not bad, but we can go ahead and cancel that out also for now. What I want to do is come to this, noise filtering. This is going to help with the firefly effect, which, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and just set this back to kind of how it was before. Real quick, and we see all of those. If we turn on noise filtering and do it, it's going to go through and it's going to take away all of those little speckles without taking the extra render time that we would have from up here. But the best thing to do is, do some of both. If we try going fully filtered, and I mean 100%, it can cause a few issues in the middle of everything anyway. Essentially, the worst case scenario of it can blur some of your textures together. Now, with a medium for the actual quality and a high filter, if you look close, we can still see some of them in here in these really dark shadowy areas. And you also can note that some things are starting to get blurred together. So I'm going to pull this back to about a 75 to 80 range. I'm going to increase my render quality to about, I'll set it at high-ish. Let's go 32. And now when I render, I won't get all the little blurred textures together. Things will be a little bit more crisp because I have the higher quality. And the noise filtering is going to help take out a lot of these little fireflies that we would have had if we had gone way higher onto my render quality. But if we still have some, then truly we just have to increase the render quality, increase the noise filtering until it's gone. As we saw before, when we got, to 40 some decibels, all those fireflies were gone pretty much anyway. But as we go through, it won't always be available to make such high quality renders. And as far as art goes, that's most of everything we really need to worry about for the most part. Now, if I cancel this out, we can add some extra things like lighting. So, let's go ahead and take a look at doing that real quick. So, what we want to do is actually come over here to create, and we're going to choose lights. Now, what we want to use for art is going to be the photometric ones. While the other ones are fine, they're not going to give us the best results. And Arnold we're going to come back to later, but we'll hit photometric. Okay, so I'll close that out, rotate my scene just a little bit, and I'm going to choose a target light. And yes, I know I'm going to create a photometric light, and this is essentially asking us if we want to update settings to make things better, so I'm going to go ahead and just say yes. So, light, target, W, move the light up just a little bit. Now, there's only one issue with doing this. Well, actually there's a couple. But the first one is the way it works with these lights. If there's one in there, everything else turns off. So if it's not there, you're really not going to see it. So I'm going to hit cancel, and this is what we call 3-point lighting overall. Essentially, we just need lights from different points illuminating an object. Now, for the most part, this isn't a big deal, because you'll have multiple lights in a scene. But, since we only have the one object, we kind of have to go through to do this for it. So now that I have some nice even 3-point lighting, I'm going to hit render, and well, we still have a few issues. Well, at least we might, depending on what kind of scene it is you're trying to do. Well, first off, those settings I left myself with before is now increasing this render time pretty drastically. Second, this is a bit glossy. So I'm going to go ahead and go back into my material editor, go into here, and I'm going to choose an unfinish on it, just so it's not quite as glossy. The rest of it can stay just fine, but I'm going to turn that off, which should help make things a little bit more even for something that theoretically will be a little bit more of a dirty crate. So with my 3-point lighting, I get a nice even lighting on it. I'm getting some shadows that, they might seem a little bit odd, but based on the edges of everything, it's probably about right overall. That said, obviously the lights would probably be more so above it pointing down and less on the sides. But little things like that we don't have to worry about for the moment. Other things we can do are do things like a free light, just to kind of give this omni light. So I'll go and take this over here, move it up, and you know what, I'm just going to hold shift and make a handful of them, just kind of as if they were ones in a ceiling. Well, it might be a little bit bright, but I'm just going to make a bunch of them. Do I need this many? Absolutely not. But I'm going to, just so we can kind of see how it looks with multiple points of light all hitting it at different places. Well, obviously we can easily see it's already very well illuminated. We still get a little bit of shadows, but they're different on each side. So overall, pretty good. And to make just a simple crate itself with basic textures, we got pretty far pretty quick. The rendering side of this takes a little bit of time, but it's also one of those, it's going to be in the background itself, so we don't have to worry too much, but it does give us all of the lighting and setup we need to see how everything's going to work anyway. So now that I have all of these, I'm actually going to go ahead and just go ahead and grab all of these, get rid of them, and do one other quick one. So I'm going to go Sun Positioner, and I'm just going to make, we'll just say simple outside scene. So everything is pretty light at the moment. So I'm just going to hit render, but we're going to hit an issue. We kind of lose everything. Well, this is why we have to be careful with the lights we use and how much we really want to put into it. In this case, with the Sun Positioner, I'm going to go ahead and go into my modifiers, and what I can do is increase some things like the distance to make it a little bit further off. I can choose intensities, I can choose placements, I can choose a lot of those little bits. But with that one specifically, I'm going to come in here into the options, and I'm going to bring down its intensity pretty drastically. Because all my stuff is pretty well close together, I'm not going to really need such a huge lighting system. And since I'm just quickly throwing things on here, it's going to be a little bit rough, and I'm not going to spend the time to really go through and fine-tune it for the example, when really what I want you to see for the most part right now is just how the one simple light can screw everything up, even if it seems like it's going to be the easiest thing to use. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of them. And I'm pretty sure my exposure settings have been completely thrown out of whack at this point. Yeah, looks like it. So I'm going to press 8, and I'm going to go ahead and just remove using the sun and sky, clear that out, re-render, and we should be back to something pretty much normal. Well, I got rid of the other lights, so normal is relative. But this does give you a quick look at making some good renders with some higher quality to make your objects stand out. And that's where we are going to call it good for today.